So, what happens when a supercritical diplomatic summit runs smack into a full blown military crisis? Well, the fallout can test even the tightest of friendships. And that's exactly what we're breaking down today. You've got this high stakes meeting between the US and Japan, all while a conflict with Iran is just escalating like crazy. All right, let's get right into it. Okay, just imagine this for a second. You're the new Prime Minister of Japan, right? It's your first official visit to the White House. You're there to talk about a huge global crisis, and the President of the United States looks you in the eye and says this. I mean, wow. That one single, really jarring comment. It basically set the stage for one of the most tense diplomatic meetings we've seen in a long, long time. And this wasn't some off-the-cuff remark at a press conference or something. No, no. This happened inside the Oval Office. So get this. A Japanese reporter asks President Trump why he didn't give allies a heads up before striking Iran. And his response, he calls it a surprise attack, and then he makes that incredibly direct, pointed comparison to Pearl Harbor. He said it right to Prime Minister Takeichi's face. So let's really unpack what was going on behind all those diplomatic smiles. Because, in public, it was all handshakes and photo ops. But behind closed doors, a massive geopolitical crisis was forcing some incredibly difficult conversations. Yeah, on the surface, everything looked pretty friendly, right? You've got Prime Minister Takaichi echoing her predecessor, Shinzo Abe, declaring Japan is back. She even gifted 250 cherry trees to the U.S. And President Trump, for his part, congratulated her on her huge election win. But underneath all that was this friction you just couldn't ignore. The sources actually say Takaichi was visibly shocked by that Pearl Harbor comment. Like, her eyes went wide, she took this sharp breath in. That one moment, it just perfectly captures the huge strain of this entire visit. So why was there so much tension? What was the big deal? Well, it's because half a world away, the Middle East was basically exploding into open conflict. And the shockwaves from that, they were hitting Washington and Tokyo hard. And the flashpoint for all of this is right here, the Strait of Hormuz. Now, you might look at it and see a narrow channel, but get this, a staggering 1/5 of the entire world's oil supply passes through there every single day. So for a country like Japan, which is so dependent on this route for its energy, well, keeping it open isn't just about economics. We're talking about national survival here. And right now, that whole region is in total crisis. I mean, it's a real mess. The U.S. launched strikes on Iranian missile sites. So what does Iran do? They deploy naval mines, basically blockading the whole strait. Then you have the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad getting hit by drones and rockets. American military casualties are climbing. We're talking 13 dead, over 200 wounded. And it's not even contained. The conflict is spreading, with Iran now attacking major oil fields in the UAE too. Okay, so this brings us right to the core problem. The big dilemma facing the alliance. You've got the world's oil lifeline being choked off, and so the United States is officially putting out the call. They're asking their partners for help. And the American position here, laid out by President Trump himself, is crystal clear. He's basically pointing out, hey, countries like Japan get way more of their oil from the Strait of Hormuz than we do. The message couldn't be simpler. You guys benefit from this waterway, so you need to step up and help protect it. But that call for an international escort mission, it pretty much hit a brick wall. It's left the U.S. feeling almost completely isolated. Australia, they gave a flat no. European nations basically said, this is your war to finish. Even key partners in the region, like the UAE, are kind of hedging their bets. And with Japan being so hesitant in public, well, the alliance is looking anything but united right now. And all of this puts Prime Minister Takaichi in what is, frankly, an almost impossible position. She is caught between a rock and a hard place, stuck between the demands of her most important ally on one side and the overwhelming will of her own people on the other. I mean, just look at these numbers. An incredible 80% of the Japanese public is against U.S. military action in Iran. Only 9% support it. Let that sink in for a minute. For any leader in a democracy, ignoring public opinion that strong, that's basically political suicide. This is the reality she's dealing with back home. And let's be really clear here. This isn't just, Japan's typical anti-war stance. The numbers actually tell a much deeper story. If you look back to 2003, during the lead-up to the Iraq War, 59% of people in Japan opposed U.S. action. Today, that opposition has skyrocketed to 80%. That tells you the public is way more skeptical of this specific conflict than they have been of past American interventions. Japan has tried to walk this tightrope before. Back in 2019, they actually refused to join a similar U.S. escort mission. Then, a year later, they found this clever compromise, sending a so-called research vessel that could provide escorts without officially joining the American-led coalition. But that kind of loophole? It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Today, Iran has made it crystal clear. If you help the U.S., you're our enemy. The stakes are just infinitely higher now. Okay, so let's pull the camera back a bit. Let's look at the bigger picture and see how this crisis in the Middle East is creating some really dangerous ripple effects all the way across Asia. So the official agenda for the summit between Takaichi and Trump was pretty straightforward. They needed to talk about the Iran conflict, the Hormuz escort mission, and of course reaffirming the alliance. But look at that last point on the list, and this is really important: ensuring peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. What that tells you is that both leaders get it. They understand that a crisis in one part of the world has direct consequences for security somewhere else. And here's a number that's just hanging over every single one of these strategic decisions. Just 3 weeks into this conflict, the U.S. national debt has already blown past $39 trillion. That immense financial pressure really helps explain why Washington is pushing its allies so hard to chip in. The reality is the U.S. just can't afford to be the world's police all by itself anymore. Which leaves us with this final and maybe most critical question. At the end of the day, if America's most important alliance in Asia is this strained over a conflict in the Middle East, what does that signal about its ability to respond if a crisis breaks out in, say, the Taiwan Strait? Seriously, how these allies navigate this current firestorm could end up redefining global security for decades to come.